My name is Tao Zhang. I'm a UX designer for ArcGIS Online, supporting both online and JavaScript API. This is my colleague, Kelly.
Hi, I'm Kelly Hutchins. I'm a product engineer on the ArcGIS API for JavaScript team. I work primarily with the ArcGIS Online configurable apps.
Cool. You can download the slides from not download slides, but view the slides from this link. There's 10 at the beginning of the link and another 0 at the end of the link. So it's not 0. So just want to talk about briefly what accessibility is. Accessibility means that we need to make content usable for everyone, regardless of their abilities. And why accessibility is important, it's a law, right? So the American Disability Act and Section 508 requires that public-facing websites need to be accessible. Websites that are used by the government employees need to support people with disabilities. But that's kind of the baseline requirement. Fundamentally, right, people with different abilities should have equal access. The internet was designed for everyone. So we should make our content usable, accessible for anyone. And also from a design perspective, good accessibility is good user experience. Just like a lot of power users, they will just rely on keyboard to navigate a website, use an app. If you support good keyboard accessibility, it benefits not only the people that require keyboard to use the website, but also like power users, experienced users. It will just make their work faster and more efficient. So for this year's Dev Summit, we have 3 presentations. The first one is DIY accessibility, which was on Wednesday. And earlier today, we had a presentation on accessible web mapping applications. This one is the improving accessibility with ArcGIS Online web apps. It's a little bit more hands-on, but I encourage you, if you missed the previous 2 presentations, we will post the recordings online. I encourage you to watch the recording and give us feedback. So what we will cover today is we'll go through a typical testing process for a web app. We're testing the web app's accessibility, and we'll try to fix those issues along the way. And then we'll introduce some of the tools we use as part of our accessibility process, and also talk about some of the best practices. So I have this demo app. It's written in our JavaScript API and all the Esri technology. But it's a demo app, and I'll be using a Chrome extension called X. I have the link for downloading it, but it's just an extension in Chrome Web Store. You can download it, and then I think there's also a Firefox version. So let's jump to the app. Let me close this DevTool for a bit. So the app is pretty simple. It shows a layer with some features, and then you can use some of the tools to filter out the features, and you can do a search. It's a simple app. But I'll just open up the DevTool. Once you install X, you should see this tab in the DevTool. And then what you use is very simple. Just click on the Analyze button. X will tell you some of the issues in terms of accessibility and the app has. But let's go to this one. It says elements must have sufficient color contrast. And then it gives you a little bit description and where that issue is. And then you can highlight the issue and see, hey, this, if you just eyeball it, you will see it's not that clear, especially for no vision users, because the text is so great. So that's kind of related to the color contrast issue. So there's a success criterion in Web Content Accessibility Guideline that specifically requires that the text need to have contrast ratio of at least 4.5. How do we know that the contrast is good enough? right? So we have this a lot of tool that can calculate the contrast for you. This one is something I like. It's pretty simple. You can input the past background color and then the text color. It will give you a range, the contrast ratio, and then you can say whether that's larger than 4.5 or not. But I want to show you how you can fix it in the dev tool. So if you go to X and then inspect the code, and then in here, you can see that the text label has a color of CCC. So if you click on the color picker tool here, it will actually also tell you the contrast ratio, which is 1.5, which is not accessible. But what's nice about it, you can adjust the color contrast dynamically, and then it will tell you in real time what the new contrast ratio is, and it will tell you whether it's accessible or not. This will be a good tool for kind of debugging your design and make sure you are meeting the requirement. But if you have a designer friend, talk to that friend and it give you a better color choice. But yeah, as a developer, you can use this to identify the issue and finding where you can fix the color contrast issue. And then I want to talk about also if you look at the map itself, it's really hard to see some of the features. I'm still in the color picker. Like this is a feature. It's really hard to see because the background color is kind of really similar to the feature, the symbol color. The way that you can, there's some tools that can help you pick the right color. One of them is the color cube. So in here, you can paste your a set of brand color or the color you want to use, and then it will give you ratios like how this color will look like on the back, like a white background, on a black background, and how you can, what would be the best combination to make the text legible. So this can give you a quick set of calculations kind of for you to tweak your design, tweak your colors. Another tool is Color Brewer. This in the Color Brewer interface, there's a way that you can choose colorblind safe color. So this will help you choose a better color ramp if you used color in your map. You can also use check additional options like print friendly, photocopy safe. So this is another tool that can help you make better color decisions. And we have an article. I think we have a bunch of articles. I just choose the one I found. How to make smart color choices in your map on Esri blog. We talk about how you can use color to convey the information, how you can make the color work, the symbol color work with the background or the base map. Yeah, so feel free to check those resources out. And then from a designer's perspective, a lot of times we need to use color to convey information. So naturally, we want to use the color as a background and put white text on it. But it's really hard to actually make the contrast right because you have to, a lot of times you may have to go really dark to meet the contrast requirement, right? But the dark color will grab people's attention, which is sometimes not necessary because the color is only there to convey that information. You don't want the dark color to disrupt your design. A design trick is that you flip the contrast. Instead of using the white text on the dark background, use dark text on the white color background. So this way the color is still there. It's not getting unwanted attention, but you can still meet the contrast requirement. The user can still get that information from this design. And let's go back to the app. have to do another scan. But you will notice that our images don't have alternate text from X. If you highlight this one, it's the Esri logo. So it says that you need to ensure images have a alternate text so that people with non-sighted users or people with no vision, they can, if they're using screen reader, they can still understand what the image is about. For this particular case, though, the Esri logo is only for decoration purposes. It doesn't have a good concrete meaning, so we should add an empty alt tag into the code. So we can actually just inspect the node, and in here, just add the empty alt. So yeah, so whenever you have images in your content or app, just ask yourself whether the image conveys meaning. If it conveys meaning, it needs to have text alternative. Otherwise, if the image is decorative, use the empty alternative text. There is actually some guidelines for writing effective alternate text. Just think about how users will need to will be doing with the images and be concise and accurate in describe the content of the images. You don't need to say this is an image of something, because by nature, if the user are reading the alternate text, it is an image. So some example here. So in this app, we have this base map gallery. They're mostly for the thumbnails of the base maps are for decoration purposes, because we already have the text under each thumbnail describe what each base map is. So as I inspect the thumbnail of the base map, you notice that we have an empty alt, the empty alternate text for the thumbnail. So that way, when the non-sighted users using a screen reader to read the base map gallery, they will not hear the file name of the thumbnail, or just hear the text below the thumbnail. Just a nice experience for non-sighted users. But on the other hand, if you have an image that conveys meaning, the user need to understand what the image is about. We need to have a concise alternate text. So in this example, you'll see that in the code here, we add the alternate text, Rosa Parks seated above Montgomery, Alabama bus. So it's a short sentence that describes the gist of the image. So it's good for the screen readers to get the same content and as sighted users. I guess I'll turn to Kelly to talk about landmark.
I think I have a microphone now that works. Okay, so landmarks, the way I try and remember what landmarks are is landmarks in the real life are recognizable places that you can navigate to, right? Like the Eiffel Tower in Paris. So these are just recognizable sections of the page that are easy for people using assistive technology to use to quickly get to various components of the page. It's especially useful for experienced assistive technology users or those who visited your site before. Or those who visited the site before and they know they just want to go to a particular section of the page right away. They can just quickly navigate there. They don't have to tab through your entire tab order to get to the section that they're interested in. So this is a really important feature to add to the page. It's flagged as an error if you don't have a landmark element. So there are HTML elements, these HTML sectioning elements like header, nav, main, and footer that serve the same purpose. They have these default roles that are applied. So a header has a role of banner in most situations applied to it, nav a role of navigation. So it's good if you're using those to understand what those ARIA roles mean, because if you use these things in an incorrect manner, you can confuse people who are using your site with assistive technology. So I found this site earlier today, and I thought it was a really great way to get a handle on what landmarks are and how they work. First of all, it has a section on the HTML5 sectioning elements, and it talks about what the default landmark role is given to that element depending on some criteria. So it's a great place to go read through this and understand. But the part I thought was really cool, if you click this Show Landmarks button, it quickly just blocks out the page with borders. And you can see the banner, the navigation, main, complementary. So it's a good way to quickly kind of get a sense of what those different landmarks mean in a page and how you might divide your website up in a similar manner. So our sample application that Tao showed you earlier has a problem in that it doesn't have any landmarks applied to it. My Axe extension is being goofy, so I don't have the errors up, but he showed you how those look earlier. So I'm just going to show you how we would add one landmark element to this. So here we clearly have a banner, right? We have title text and a logo, so that's like a classic page banner. So I'm just going to inspect that element in HTML. These are just temporary changes we're making in the browser so that you guys can see how you would do this. So I have this panel header. All I really need to do is come in here and edit the HTML and say role equals if I can type, role equals banner. And then if we ran Axe again, it would recognize that we have a valid landmark and we would affix that rule. So I can test it, and then when I know it's good, I can go back and add that role into my application and we'll be good to go. And you should do that with other sections of your page as well. So focus and tab order is also really important. Here's the WCAG guideline that requires that all interactive elements should have a clear focus ring around it. I know that this comes up all the time. Maybe 3 or 4 releases ago in the JS API, we added a blue focus ring around the map element when it's active. And as soon as we released that, I can't tell you how many emails and stuff I got where people are like, how can I get rid of that blue ring? Can I turn it off? And you would have to say, no, you can't really do that. Please don't do that. It's important for people who are navigating the site through the keyboard. And I think it's also visually helpful for those of us who are using a mouse. It's a quick indicator of where you are on the page, what the active element is. So try and educate your users that it's something that they should come to appreciate, not want to disable. The tab order should also be logical and intuitive. As you're navigating through the page, things shouldn't jump around. Elements shouldn't be skipped. It's really confusing for both people using assistive technology and people who just prefer to navigate the site through the keyboard. They're like, whoa, wait, how do I get back to that element that you just skipped? So yes, one of the most important tests you can do on your website, even after you run the automated testing, is to actually physically tab through your entire page. I'll usually unplug my mouse just so I'm not tempted to use it and just try and navigate through the keyboard only. I'm not sure you're going to be able to see the bottom one. My resolution's a little goofy. Oh, maybe because I have this. Yeah.
Zoom out, maybe?
Yeah. There you go. Somehow I zoomed in again. Okay, so the other thing, there's another criteria, WCAG 2.1.2, which says content does not track keyboard focus within subsections. So sometimes you might have a dialog that pops open and focus gets trapped in there and people can't get out of that section of the page without refreshing the application. That's not a good experience. You want to avoid that. So make sure you test for that. So just reiteration, don't do this. Don't set outline 0 no matter how much someone asks you to do that. Just tell them no if it's your designer, if it's your customers, if it's your boss, just say really we can't do that. So it's a good idea to just not do that, stick with the browser's default styling, or if you absolutely have to, come up with your own consistent focus styling that's highly visible and intuitive. And makes sense for users so they understand. The tab order has to match that intended reading order. So you can set tab index equals 0. When you do that, the DOM is just going to follow the DOM order. So the order of the elements in the DOM. If you have to, you can set tab index equal to -1. So sometimes we have to do that if we plan on programmatically moving the focus. So we want to take something out of the focus tab order and then put it back in the tab order, most usually programmatically. And then setting actual physical numbers higher than 0 is an anti-pattern. You shouldn't do it. So don't do things like setting tab index equals 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever. That's a pattern that you want to avoid. Let's go, actually I'll talk about this first and then we'll go to the app. You generally want to use the button element for creating buttons. Sometimes people want to use a div element to create buttons. I think, years and years ago, the general consensus was that it was hard to style a button to get a custom look and feel. That's not been true for a really long time now, but that perception sometimes hangs around a little bit longer than it should. Buttons are easy to style and they're automatically focusable. They have the tab index set up and they have the correct button behavior. Where if you use a div to get custom styling, you're also going to have to do a bunch of work to add the custom behavior to ensure that that div is accessible. So you have to handle things like the focus behavior. You have to handle telling assistive technology that it's a button. You have to handle a lot of that work, where if you just use the appropriate element, you're good to go. Sorry, I'm trying to move through this pretty fast because we're short on time. So this is sort of just reiterating that. Choose the right HTML element for the job. It's a lot more work to try and backfill that later. Dialogues, there's a lot of good information. I'm kind of going to gloss over this. The ARIA Best Practices dialogue has information on how, if you have a dialogue, how it should behave. So when the dialogue opens, the focus should move to an element inside of the dialogue. So you should be able to be in the dialogue and you should be able to navigate through the focusable elements on the dialogue and get out. So let's go look at our app and see a few of the problems that we have in here. First, we have the fact that when you tab through this, let me go up here. I don't know if you can see, but it skips like a whole bunch of these buttons. The focus doesn't get there, and it's because there are some problems with how they've been implemented in this sample app. So if I look at here, this first button is a div, and it's styled to look like the button, so we've done one part of our job, but we haven't done the other part, which is to make it have the behavior of a button. So to fix this, I could go through and I could add tab index, I could add a roll of button, I could go into the code and handle the behavior that it should have, or I could just use a button element and don't have to do anything else. So that's how we would fix this, is to just switch that to a button element. The other problem we have is that one of these guys, this one here, for some reason, somebody set a tab index value that's greater than 0. So they set a tab index of 3, so it messes it up. It's outside the natural focus order, and the behavior is not as we'd expect. So, to fix that, the fix for this one is super easy. You just get rid of that tab index, and you're good to go. The next thing I wanted to show you was the dialogue. So we have this little sort of dialogue information that comes up, takes over the screen. But when I navigate through it, I don't know if you guys can see, but behind that overlay, the focus is actually in elements underneath that dialogue. All right, so we haven't done our job as a developer. We've created this dialogue, we've created this little overlay page behind it so you can't see the content very well, but I can't get into that dialogue. So I'm stuck now as a user who only has access to the keyboard. I have to refresh the page in order to get rid of that dialogue, and then I'm not opening it up again, right? So if I miss the content, I'm not going to see it again. So we could fix it by writing some code, but I'm going to show you that there are other options. So in this bit of sample code, let me increase this and move this over here. I was just opening it by adding the CSS class to it that made it visible and set the z-index value and popped it to the top of the page. I could write some code to handle all the behavior. It's doable, it's possible. That ARIA dialogue guide has information on the things that I need to do. But we can also save ourselves some time by using a library that supports doing that work for us. So in this particular example, I'm using Calcite Web, which is available Esri's GitHub repository, but there are lots of other third-party libraries that will help you do some of this work. So instead of doing my homegrown approach, I'm using this Calcite to open the modal, and I'm going to see that it's going to take care of all that work for me. Its accessibility support is baked in there. So if I refresh this, I hope I saved it. Save it, and now I can see that it's behaving the way it's supposed to. I can focus between the two focusable elements on the page, and I can actually get out of the dialogue, and I'm back successfully working with my application. So again, if you want to know more about working with dialogues and the logic that you'd have to do to support it on your own, that link is a great resource. So there's a lot more that's involved. This is just the beginning. So the automated testing tools can find some errors. They can't find all the errors. You're always going to have to do some manual testing. Lighthouse, which is part of Chrome, I like it because it will run an accessibility audit for you. It's available in the browsers in the Chrome browser under the audit section. It will run the audit for you, flag a bunch of errors, and then at the bottom it has a little section that great, but you're not done yet. You need to manually check these 8 things. So it gives you a checklist that you can navigate down, and it tells you what to check for. So this is the GitHub repo for it with information, but you can also run it in audits right here, and you can check the accessibility link and run that audit, and it'll give you that information. It's going to take a few minutes and do its thing, so we won't wait for it to finish, but it'll give you a report and then some manual steps to perform. Screen readers, it's important to test it with the screen reader. Screen readers are widely available. 2 options. One on the Mac is VoiceOver. On Windows, you can use NVDA. We have links to some videos that have a quick introduction in how to work with a screen reader. It can be a little weird at the beginning. It's good to have a video introduction to it. And accessibility should be part of your development process. When you're building a site, it's one of the things that you should think about at the beginning. So take our survey. This is the first time we've done this particular demo theater, so if it was useful, let us know. If it wasn't, let us know. If you expected something different or wish we'd shown something different, let us know. We'll make it better next time we do it. And there's 3 minutes before the next session starts, so maybe we can take questions. You can try and catch us later too.